I had not realized there were so many educators and people working with youth and young people in this congregation. I remember my first time stepping into this congregation. The first person I encountered in this very church was Lynn, as he was passing out pamphlets in the foyer. And I was like, cool, I don't know who this guy is, but he's smiling and he's really excited about this church. And I went in. And later realizing like he would be one of my professors at the seminary. And so it's just so beautiful, the many and few spaces where you can have both students and your professors. What a gift. I'm curious, how many of us here have experienced rejection before? Maybe you want to raise your hand, been rejected. Maybe it was in your youth and that one girl at church just wouldn't say yes to your date, or boy. Or maybe it was later in your college years, applying to universities, hoping for that acceptance letter and getting rejected. Or how many of us ever been rejected from a party? Whatever the rejection, we know that it stings. And if you're anything like me, it'll probably take a couple years to muster that strength again, to take that leap of faith, to apply again, to go, to show up, to put on, to rewire my brain to believe that I am welcomed and received. So what do? I've often put off hope, and furthermore, any action or deed that would result in a better outcome. In this story, there is a bride and a groom, and they're ready to celebrate this great feast the king has prepared for them. And this isn't just any party. You see, the text makes it clear. The oxen and the fattened cattle have been butchered. Come celebrate my son. I want to go ahead and take a little side story. In my culture, in Mexican culture, it's very common. I remember growing up, we lived in a Rosie, and I was really young, but I would go play outside in our backyard, and out of nowhere, maybe my sister will remember this, maybe not, but out of nowhere, there would just be a goat tied to a tree. How many have ever experienced that? Just a random goat tied to your tree, and we would go and play kind of, I don't know, we would like get close to the goat and see if he could like chase us, or how close could we get before we were like seriously hurt. And then later, there would be a party we didn't know nothing about, and we'd be eating birria, this tasty goat. And at that young age, I never made that association, but there was this goat, and then there was great food. And so maybe you know where I'm going here with this. There was a great party. We know a little bit about parties. Yet the invited guests didn't come to this great feast that was being prepared for them. The text says they were too busy with their lives to make it to this grand celebration. One had their business to attend to, the other one had a field to attend to. In fact, some of the other invitees mistreated the servants, and we later see the way that this angers the king and how he responds. Then we see that the king again sends out his servants to invite more people to this feast. The feast must go on. But this time the invitee list changes from VIP guests in the city to now the call is for everybody. You are welcome to my party, and you are welcome to my party. Kind of like Oprah, you come and you come and you come. All are welcomed. To those on the margins, out in the streets, all are welcomed. It actually says both the good and the bad were at this party. This was a poppin' party, I'm guessing, filled with guests. Come and celebrate my son. I kind of imagine it like this. The king is having a grand time with his guests, eating the best of foods, something similar to a plate of great menudo or pozole, if you're familiar with pozole, or fatty salmon, like Al had mentioned. Great food, and he spots someone who looks a little out of dress code. Man, this was a poppin' party, a great feast, the celebration of the year, and everyone who had come to this party put on their wedding garments. Yet there was this person who came but was missing an important item. Did he miss the memo? Why, the text does not say, but it does say this displeased the king. From this text and the preceding chapter, we can make a couple observations. One, Jesus has returned to Jerusalem. He comes in grand, he's riding a donkey, and there's children around surrounding him, yelling, "Hosanna, the Son of David." This is the final time we see Jesus enter the city before he's crucified. And he goes into the temple courts, and this is where we see some of that action of he's flipping tables. And we see some immediately, the teachers of the law were indignant or annoyed. They were indignant. They were questioning his authority, and we're all too familiar with the way we see Jesus respond to these Pharisees and teachers of the law. Anyone want to take a guess? He responds in parables, one of them being the text of today. Another observation would be the way in which these parables parallel God's call to the Israelites throughout the Old Testament, sending his prophets to Israel to turn away and follow God. And we also see the way Israel treats the prophets. And like Israel, the VIP invitees have rejected the invitation to this feast. So the king sends out another wave of invitations, this time to all, both the good and the bad, all are welcomed. But what about the guy that broke dress code again and was booted out for not having dressed for the event? Seems a bit harsh, Jesus. Everyone's welcome, but there's a catch. Commentators share that this isn't a hell conversation per se, but more of a conversation on judgment for right living. You see, these Pharisees, they knew the law, yet weren't living out the law. And honestly, this sounds a bit familiar. It sounds a lot like my conversations with Gen Z. They see people of faith, yet aren't engaged when it really matters. Climate change, border crises, racial reconciliation, tensions in Ukraine, the spreading of shalom, being kind. Growing up Catholic and Mexican, we loved to throw parties. Baptisms, first communions, it was a grand feast. Tasty birria and delicious Mexican rice and beans, all were invited. Yet we knew that before we got there, we received an invitation of sorts. And also it came with an ask, could you contribute? And this was the time also when we would make padrinos or madrinas, godparents or godparents, godmother, godfather. And we actually did this at our wedding as well. I don't know if many of you were there. We did this at our wedding. We invited people and we'd also say, here's an invitation also if you want to donate to like the food or the drinks or the chairs, like you're the godmother of that. And in our culture too, you become the godmother of the chairs. And you become the godmother of the umbrellas. Whatever it is, you become that grandmother, and you're also honored in that invitation. So usually you make the ask even before the invitation, and when you get the invitation, all of those are printed out in the invitation for everyone to see. So it is a great honor. So some people, they're familiar with this idea of asking for padrinos. We did this for our wedding. We invited friends and family. Could you contribute? And they did. And this also invitation people receive with honor. Whether it's some fancy attire they come with or a contribution, you knew it was there. They were invited and they came ready. And people always took this with honor, and they also invited just about anybody to this party too. Let me tell you that. Even if you received an invitation, later on they'd be like, you know what, this is way too much food. Let's go ahead and invite the neighbors. Actually, let me call and text some people. So all were welcomed. That was always one of my favorite parts and favorite memories of my childhood. So what does this text mean for us today? What is Jesus saying in this complex parable that can go a couple different directions? I'd like to say that for me, and hopefully for you, it is a parable of hope. From rejection to invitation, from outsiders to insiders, from bounded to centered, from hope and to hope. God calls us and welcomes all. All are in the kingdom. And now that we are in the kingdom, can I just say that comes with further invitation? I wonder what our roles are now in the kingdom. what our garments are as we are in this feast, as we enter this feast. What does it look like to put on faith? To live it out, to become sharers in the kingdom and bearers of Jesus in the midst. I'll end it with this quote from Richard E. Spalding. He says, "Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony." Jesus suggests that fruitfulness can indeed be put on like a wedding robe or a baptismal garment, that the outward effects of the gospel choices will finally settle in the heart. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. Welcome to the feast.